In 1976, a Japanese cardiologist arrived in Okinawa, convinced he would find patients. He was young, freshly trained, and the island had a reputation for having the oldest population in Japan. He came with his bag, his forms, and the full logic of modern medicine. What he found left him speechless. The patients weren't sick. There was nothing to write on their charts. Men and women in their 80s, 90s, hundreds, clean arteries, stable glucose, no medication, no decline. These weren't exceptional cases. This was just normal. His name was Makoto Suzuki, and instead of going back to the mainland, he decided to stay. 40 years studying why these people aged in a way that was completely different from the rest of the world. What he found wasn't a gene. It wasn't the climate. It wasn't luck. It was what they ate every single day for their entire lives. Today, I want to show you exactly what Suzuki found, because there are three core practices in the Okinawan diet that regulate the same biological processes we manage with pills in the West: chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, and blood glucose instability. Okinawa's centenarians didn't have prescription pads, they had a kitchen. And there's one thing Suzuki documented in every single centenarian in the study. Not a food, not a supplement, nothing you can buy in a pharmacy that the researchers almost overlooked because it seemed too simple to be the answer. I'll get to that at the end, but it only makes sense once you understand the first two. Let's start where the story starts. Most people, when they hear about Okinawan longevity, assume one of three things: genes, climate, or a simple lifestyle. Meaning these are rural people who just never had access to the food that's slowly killing the rest of us. That last one is the most common, and it is backwards. When Okinawans immigrated to Brazil and adopted a Western diet, their longevity advantage disappeared within 2 generations. When fast food arrived after the U.S. military occupation, the island that ranked first in Japan for life expectancy dropped to 26th place for men by 2002 in less than a generation. The Okinawan advantage wasn't destiny. It was a daily practice, meaning it can be lost and it can be rebuilt. Here's where most explanations stop short. Okinawans don't just eat different foods. They eat foods that directly regulate three biological processes that accelerate aging after 60: chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, and blood glucose instability. Most people in the West manage all three with pills. Okinawans manage them with food. Chronic inflammation is the root driver of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, and most cancers. C-reactive protein, the blood marker for systemic inflammation, runs dramatically lower in Okinawan elders than in age-matched Western populations. Not because of a supplement, because of what they eat. Oxidative stress is cellular rust, the accumulated free radical damage that speeds up every decade after 50. Okinawan centenarians show higher levels of the body's own antioxidant enzymes than Western adults who are 30 years younger. And blood glucose instability, the spike and crash cycle that drives insulin resistance, is one of the fastest routes to accelerated aging. Okinawans eat in a way that keeps glucose flat and steady, not because they count anything, because of what they eat and how they eat it. 3 pillars, 3 practices. Let's start with the first. There's a man named Seru Taguchi who lives in the village of Ogimi in northern Okinawa. He was 105 years old when a researcher last interviewed him. He still did light farming. He ate the same foods he'd eaten since childhood. And when the researchers looked at his cardiovascular markers, they found the arteries of a man in his 60s. His primary food for most of his life, the purple sweet potato called imo in Okinawan. For most of the 20th century, before rice became widely available, imo made up roughly 69% of daily calories on the island, not as a side dish, as the main course. And the specific variety grown in Okinawa, deep purple, not the orange type most Westerners know, contains a compound called sporamin that acts as a natural antioxidant with activity comparable to vitamin E. Here's what that means after 60. The purple sweet potato has a glycemic index of around 44. White bread sits at 75. White rice at 72. Every time you eat a high glycemic carbohydrate, you trigger a blood sugar spike. That spike triggers inflammation. That inflammation, repeated thousands of times over years, is how cardiovascular disease and cognitive decline build quietly in the background. The emo doesn't do that. It feeds you without triggering the cascade. A 2021 study published in the journal Nutrients found that regular consumption of purple sweet potato extract significantly reduced C-reactive protein, the inflammation marker, in adults over 50. Not modestly reduced, significantly. Take a moment right now and think about what you ate for breakfast this morning. Toast, cereal, granola, a bagel. Now think about what you ate for breakfast 10 years ago. If it's the same category of food, the inflammation response has been running in your body quietly every single morning for a decade. That's the signal this first practice is most relevant to you. Here's what this looks like in practice. Step 1. Replace your morning carbohydrate with a medium sweet potato. Boil it or bake it the night before if that's easier. Not fried, not loaded with butter, just cooked as it is. If you can find the purple Okinawan variety at an Asian grocery store, use that. Orange is fine. Both work. Step 2. Add a tablespoon of olive oil or eat it alongside something with fat. The fat-soluble antioxidants in the sweet potato need fat to be absorbed. This is not optional. Without it, you get a fraction of the benefit. Step 3. Eat it in the morning, not the evening. Blood glucose sensitivity is highest in the morning and declines through the day. The emo eaten at breakfast keeps glucose flat for hours. The same food eaten late at night does far less work. In the first week, don't expect a transformation. What you're likely to notice is a steadier energy curve, less of the mid-morning drop that hits about 90 minutes after a high-carb breakfast. That's the signal. That's the body responding. The most common error. People add the sweet potato to their existing breakfast instead of replacing the high glycemic carbohydrate. The swap is the practice, not the addition. This is the foundation. The one food that made up most of what Okinawa's centenarians ate for their entire lives. But there's a specific second food that makes this first one work twice as hard, and it's the one most people have never heard of. I'll get to that in a few minutes. Think back to the sweet potato. The reason it works is that it keeps blood glucose stable. Now here's the part that surprised the researchers in a population that ate a high carbohydrate diet, sweet potatoes, rice, legumes every day. How did they maintain near normal fasting glucose levels in their 80s and 90s? How did they eat that many carbohydrates without the blood sugar problems that are now epidemic in every Western country? The answer is a vegetable called Goya, bitter melon, and it is the most counterintuitive food in the Okinawan system. You've been told that managing blood sugar is about reducing carbohydrates. That's the standard advice. Low carb, keto, reducing sugar. Cut the carbohydrates and the glucose problem goes away. That's not what Okinawa shows us. Okinawans ate plenty of carbohydrates. They didn't restrict them, they regulated them with a specific food that contains compounds that behave in the body similarly to insulin, without the prescription, without the side effects. Goya contains at least 3 active compounds, charenton, visine, and polypeptide P that directly improve glucose uptake in cells. A study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology compared bitter melon extract to metformin, one of the most commonly prescribed diabetes medications in the world in adults with type 2 diabetes. Bitter melon produced comparable reductions in HbA1c, the key long-term blood sugar marker, comparable to a pharmaceutical drug with a vegetable. This is the counterintuitive part. The centenarians of Okinawa weren't managing their metabolic health by eating less. They were managing it by eating something specific every single day. Now here's the modern trap, and this is the one that catches almost everyone. When people hear about bitter melon's blood sugar benefits, the immediate impulse is to buy a capsule, extract it, put it in a pill, take it in the morning with the other supplements. The supplement industry understood this immediately, and there are now hundreds of bitter melon capsule products on the market. But this matters. The Okinawan centenarians didn't take bitter melon extract. They ate bitter melon as food in a stir-fry called goya champru, cooked with tofu, egg, and pork eaten as a meal. The food matrix, the fiber, the water content, the way it was chewed and digested alongside other whole foods changes how these compounds interact with the gut. The extract removes all of that. Around minute 17, I'm going to explain the specific mechanism of why the supplement version of this and others like it actually misses the point entirely. That's the trap most people are already in without knowing it. Here's the honest protocol. Step 1. Find a bitter melon at an Asian grocery store. Have it. Scoop out the seeds, slice it thin, salt it for 10 minutes, and rinse. This takes out the worst of the bitterness. Then stir-fry it with firm tofu, a beaten egg, and a splash of soy sauce. This is the original Goya champuru. It takes 15 minutes. Step 2. Aim for 2 to 3 servings per week, not every day. The research on Okinawan consumption shows regular but not daily intake of Goya in most households. Step 3. Pair it with the sweet potato from Tier 1. The combination of slow-release carbohydrate plus natural glucose regulator is exactly what the Okinawan diet delivered at the same meal every day. They didn't call it a protocol, they called it lunch. Now pause for a second. Think about the last meal that left you hungry 2 hours later. That hunger spike, that craving that hits in the mid-afternoon, is your blood sugar dropping after a spike. You felt this thousands of times. What if it just stopped? That's what consistent Tier 1 and Tier 2 practice delivers. Not the first week. By week 3 or 4, with 2 to 3 Goya champuru meals per week alongside the morning sweet potato, the blood glucose curve starts to flatten. The afternoon crash gets smaller. Energy becomes more consistent. These aren't dramatic claims. They're the modest, honest signals the body sends when glucose regulation improves. If you're finding this useful, subscribe to our channel. Every week we go deep on one longevity zone, one practice, one system, always with the science, always with a protocol you can actually use. We're now at 2 of the 3 pillars. The third one is the one I've been holding back. In the early years of the Okinawa centenarian study, the researchers focused on what they could measure easily: blood pressure, cholesterol, diet composition. All of those told a clear story. But one researcher noticed something that didn't show up in the standard measurements. When he visited the homes of centenarians, the ones who had been eating the traditional diet for the longest, he found something specific in their relationship with food that wasn't about what they ate at all. It was about when they stopped. Hara hachi bu. It's a phrase from Confucian, teaching around 2,500 years old, that translates roughly to eat until you are 80% full. Stop before you are satisfied. Put down your utensils. Wait. Every centenarian in the Okinawa centenarian study practiced some version of this. Every single one. The researchers documented it consistently across thousands of participants spanning 4 decades. Now here's why the researchers almost missed it. They were looking for something exotic, a rare food, a genetic variant. Hara hachibu is so simple that it was initially treated as a background cultural note rather than a primary mechanism. It wasn't until the caloric data was analyzed that its significance became clear. Okinawan elders were consuming on average 10 to 15% fewer calories than their energy expenditure without counting anything, without restricting anything, without a diet plan. Just by stopping before full, that caloric deficit maintained over decades appears to trigger a set of cellular responses that directly slow biological aging. The mechanism involves a longevity gene called FOXO3. When the body is in a slight caloric deficit, FOXO3 expression increases. FOXO3 reduces inflammation at the cellular level, improves the body's ability to detect and repair malfunctioning cells, and has been directly associated with longer telomeres, the protective caps on DNA that shorten with age. The Wilcox research team, who collaborated on the Okinawa centenarian study, published findings in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2008, showing that the FOXO3 gene variant is significantly more common in Okinawan centenarians than in comparison populations. But here's the critical part. FOXO3 is not just a gene you either have or don't. It is activated by diet. Specifically, it is activated by the foods in this system: turmeric, sea vegetables, tofu, and by caloric moderation, by hara hachi bu. This is the mechanism that closes loop 2. The modern version of the Okinawan approach that backfires isn't a single food. It's the entire framework. We supplement instead of eating whole foods. We overeat the right foods instead of practicing moderation. We take curcumin capsules instead of cooking with turmeric alongside fat and black pepper. which increases its bioavailability by up to 2,000% according to a 1998 study in Plantamedica. The capsule version delivers the compound in isolation. The food version delivers it in context with cofactors with the food matrix with absorption mechanisms that evolved over thousands of years of cooking. Americans over 55 spend more than $40 billion a year on dietary supplements, and study after study shows that for the most popular ones, omega-3 capsules, vitamin D pills, isolated curcumin, the evidence for meaningful benefit is at best inconsistent. Not because the compounds don't work, because the delivery mechanism strips out everything that makes them work in food. The Okinawan centenarians had a pharmacy in their kitchen garden, not a cabinet full of capsules. A garden full of Goya, sweet potato, turmeric, and aloe 15 steps from the back door. Now here's how the complete system works together. Tier 1, every morning, a medium sweet potato with a source of fat. This is your glucose anchor. It sets the metabolic tone for the day. Tier 2, 2 to 3 times per week, Goya champuru, the bitter melon stir-fry with tofu and egg. This is your glucose regulator. It handles what the emo can't do alone. Tier 3. At every meal, hara hachi bu. Stop at 80%. Not 70, not 110, 80. This takes practice. The signal from your gut to your brain that you're full takes approximately 20 minutes. So the practical instruction is simple. Eat until you're no longer hungry. Then stop before you think you're done. Put the fork down. Wait 5 minutes. If you're still hungry after 5 minutes, eat more. You almost certainly won't be. And to bring in the last foods that activate FOXO3, add turmeric to your cooking daily. A teaspoon in eggs, soup, rice, roasted vegetables, always with black pepper and a fat source. And add a tablespoon of dried wakame seaweed to a miso broth twice a week. This is the simplest version of the sea vegetable practice, and it provides the mineral profile, iodine, magnesium, marine carotenoids that the Okinawan diet delivers in ways a standard Western diet never does. Total daily time under 10 minutes. Not a lifestyle overhaul, a direction. Now the honest timeline. In 3 to 5 days of the morning sweet potato swap, most people notice a change in their energy curve. The mid-morning crash gets smaller. Nothing dramatic, just a small, real signal. After 7 days of consistent practice, appetite patterns begin to shift. This is Hara Hachibu working. You'll start to notice the difference between satisfied and full, which are not the same thing and which most adults haven't distinguished in years. After 30 days with the full tier 1, 2, and 3 practice running, inflammatory markers, including the joint stiffness and mental fog that many people over 60 accept as normal, typically begin to reduce, not disappear, reduce steadily. After 90 days, the pattern is established. The habits are no longer effortful, and what felt like discipline in week 1 is just how you eat. The one ingredient I mentioned at the beginning, the one no Western diet has ever included, is Hara Hachibu itself. Not a food, a relationship with eating. The practice of stopping before full is not a diet strategy. It is a daily activation of the cellular machinery that slows how fast you age. Every centenarian in the study did it. None of them had a name for it as a health practice. It was just how you ate. The researchers almost missed it because it looked too simple to be the answer. It is the answer. Here's where we started. A 104-year-old woman in a garden at dawn, bending down, standing back up. No pills, no stiffness, no doctor's chart. We looked at that image and most of us feel two things at once: admiration and distance, like it's something that happened to someone else. But the Okinawa centenarian study spent 40 years proving that it wasn't destiny. The people who moved away and changed their diet lost the advantage. The traditional practices maintained across a lifetime produced the biology, not genes, practices. In the West, we count calories. We restrict carbohydrates. We supplement with the extracted compound because it's easier than cooking with the whole food. We eat until we're full because we were never taught that full and satisfied are different things, and we're aging faster than we should as a result. Okinawans don't count anything. They eat a purple sweet potato in the morning. They cook bitter melon with tofu twice a week. They stop eating at 80%. They grow turmeric in the garden and add it to everything. They've done this for 100 years, and they outlive us by a decade in better health, with clearer minds, with bodies that still work. The action for today is this. Tomorrow morning, replace your breakfast carbohydrate with a boiled sweet potato. That's it. One swap, one morning. See what you feel by 10 hours. That's where it starts. If you want to keep going, subscribe to our channel. Every week we go deep on one zone, one practice, one complete system. Always with the real research, always with something you can start this week. One question before you go, drop it in the comments. Which of the three practices we covered today are you going to try first? The sweet potato, the Goya champuru, or harahachi bu? I read every comment and I want to know where you're starting. The woman in the garden already knows the answer. Now you do too. If this story changes the way you look at the food on your plate and the health of your future, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history and science of longevity that has been hidden in plain sight. Let's plant the seeds for a longer, healthier life together. The next treasure of wisdom will be revealed soon.